I committed adultery. It was nearly 20 years ago. It continued far too long. It involved one person, and there's been no other, nor any other situation of unbecoming conduct for the last 20 years. I will not use the Bible to defend, protect, deflect my past sin. I have no defense. I committed the adultery.
That was Indiana pastor John Lowe confessing to cheating on his wife during a recent church service. Now, he was later confronted by the person that he had cheated on his wife with. And I commend her for her bravery because she confronted him with the cold, hard truth about what he really did. Let's watch.
For 27 years, I lived in a prison. It was not 20 years. I lived in a prison of lies and shame, lying to protect the Lowe family. For years, I thought I was a horrible person having suicidal thoughts, not realizing what had been truly done to me, that I was a victim and I would still be in a prison if my brother, and many of you know him, Edgar Wolf, had not approached me just 2 weeks ago with what he had seen as a teenager that bothered him all these years. His pastor in bed with his younger sister, a t-shirt and underwear on. People knew but were too afraid to come forward, and they have now. The lies and the manipulation have to stop. I was a prisoner and you kept me in your prison. I'm a prisoner no longer. I was just 16 when you took my virginity on your office floor.
She was 16 years old. In Indiana, having sex with a 16-year-old is not considered statutory rape because the age of consent is 16. But as you can hear from her voice, it doesn't sound like she consented to it. And she said that in front of the entire church, confronted him in front of the entire church after he had confessed to adultery. And of course, what he did was far worse than that. The churchgoers were clapping for him. They were proud of him for confessing to his sins. After she stood up and confronted him, I was really proud to see that the churchgoers were furious with him. They were heckling him. They were angry with him. A few people decided to go pray with him. But nonetheless, it does take tremendous courage to do what that woman did. And the reason why I'm not giving you her name is because since she's a sexual abuse victim, they're not naming her in the press. But Cenk, thoughts on this?
I thought the most powerful part was when she said that she lived for all those years in a prison of lies and shame.
Yeah.
And it's because fundamentalists do that to all of us. They set up fake rules and rules that they never abide by. And then they say, if you go outside of these rules, you should be ashamed, ashamed. Well, weren't you ashamed when you raped that 16-year-old in your office floor, pretending to be her shepherd, her helper, her pastor? No, you don't have shame. But she should have shame because she had sex when she was younger. Yeah, she had sex because you raped her. But no, they genuinely believe she should have shame. I'm so sick of it. If you're gay, you should have shame for how God created you. Why doesn't God have shame? If he created you that way, why is it your fault? But they say, no, you should feel so much shame you should consider suicide. No, you're not the immoral one, they're the immoral ones. And now I totally understand QAnon. QAnon is always saying all the leaders are pedophiles. They lead child sex rings.
Only one particular group of people with one ideology, though.
Yeah, because they're opposed to the Democrats. I understand that. But I always thought, where the hell did they get this crazy idea from? Why do they think Hollywood celebrities and Democratic leaders are in a pizza shop doing a child sex ring? You know why? Because their leaders do child sex. Their leaders do pedophilia. I mean, there's a massive report that came out about the Seaford Baptist Church. You think it was just the Catholics? No. By the way, you think it's just Christians? No, the fundamentalist Muslims do it in Afghanistan. Every fundamentalist leader is a liar. They never mean any of it, and they're almost all super evil.
You know
the minute they get you to believe that they're in charge, they will rape your kids. Okay, they do it in almost every religion. And then they say, you're not allowed to question me. And if you question me, you should live in shame. Meanwhile, when you're not looking, they're raping your kids. So since the right wing lived through that, because it's their churches, they assume, I guess all leaders are rapists and go after children. No, it's your leaders.
Then go after your leaders. If your theory is correct, then they should go after their religious leaders
100%
who have a history of sexual abuse. Okay, in fact, why don't we get to the details of that 300-page report regarding the Southern Baptist Church, evangelicals, who, by the way, have become so politically powerful in this country that I will get a say over my own body, okay? A church that can't even clean up its own mess in-house regarding the brutalization and sexual abuse of their parishioners. Let me give you those details. So as I mentioned, it's a 300-page report. It looked at sexual abuse in the Southern Baptist Convention over 20 years, 20 years. And of course, it's exactly what you can expect. Sexual abuse happens, church finds out about it. What do? They cover it up. Doesn't matter if it's rape, doesn't matter how young the victim is, they don't care. The report covering 20 years of sexual abuse accusations claims that top church leaders suppressed and mishandled abuse claims, resisted reforms, and belittled victims and their families. These are the pro-life goons, again, who are stripping Americans of their rights. Okay, these disgusting, disgusting people who think that they're entitled to violating the bodies of their own parishioners now get to make decisions about what women get to do with their own bodies. It's disgusting. In fact, one head pastor of the Seaford Baptist Church said of the report, "It makes you ill." It sure does, Michael Howard, it sure does. These people should have zero political power. Let me give you more. A select group of executive committee leaders largely controlled the committee's response to abuse reports, and they were singularly focused on avoiding liability for the Southern Baptist Church to the exclusion of other considerations. This meant that survivors and others who reported abuse were ignored, disbelieved, or met with the constant refrain that the SBC, the Southern Baptist Church, could take no action due to its policy regarding church autonomy, even if it meant that convicted molesters continued in ministry with no notice or warning to their current church or congregation. I'm sure Joe Rogan will be talking about this, right? Talking about the groomers and sexual abusers within the Southern Baptist Church, rather than needlessly defaming educators as groomers. I'm sure he'll do that, but let me continue. At the same time that senior leaders refused to take action, they compiled a private list of accused ministers in Baptist churches. There is no evidence that they shared this list or took any action to ensure that the accused ministers were no longer in positions of power at Southern Baptist Convention churches. Eventually, this list included a total of 703 abusers, with 409 believed to be SBC affiliated at some point in time. But they covered it up. They covered it up because who cares about the survivors of the sexual abuse? Who cares about their own parishioners? We got to protect the leadership, the evangelical leadership. We got to make sure that they have these pristine, great reputations as they essentially force their theocracy on the rest of the country in the form of doing away with the rights that we've had for over 50 years.
So let me explain what fundamentalist religion is about. Not all religion, but fundamentalists.
It's about garbage.
It's about protecting the power of men, period. So let me give you details about that. So this same Southern Baptist group, when there was a church, it's actually one of their biggest congregations in Southern California that ordained women ministers, pastors, you know what they did? Immediate investigation. Wait, you're raping little children hundreds of times, and you're like, well, I don't know if we should do an investigation. Women being in charge, immediate investigation, okay? And a couple of churches did gay marriages and that were Southern Baptists. They didn't even do an investigation, immediately kicked them out. They're like, loving someone that we don't allow, no, unacceptable. Unacceptable. You are not to celebrate love. You are not to celebrate the way God created you. You are to understand that straight men are in charge, so-called straight men are in charge, and you are to bow your head. But if they're raping your kids, no big deal, no big deal. It took them decades to figure out if they should do an investigation. Why? Because it was straight white, so-called straight white men that are in power. And by the way, it doesn't have to be white. Again, in the Muslim world, they're not white necessarily. In every part of the world, if there is a fundamentalist religious leader, watch out. There is an excellent chance they are the single most immoral person you will ever meet, and do not leave any of your family members alone with them, ever, ever. There's an excellent chance they will abuse them and then cover it up. But God forbid they should share power with anyone, women, gay people, no way, they will stamp that out. But pedophilia, they're totally okay with it, as long as they're the ones who get to do it.